Hey y'all, welcome to the Coyote Trap at School podcast. By golly, it's summer if you didn't know. At least down south, we've been breaking heat records lately, and it's already June, if you can believe that. I can't believe it's already June, but it is. The summer's here, and the year is going quick. And so I thought it'd be a good time. I don't know about you, but I am world's worst about having the best of intentions of doing all my trap prep and having traps ready during the summertime where I don't have to worry about it. Maybe early bow season comes in or even rifle season comes in, and you got to decide, do I go hunting or do I get traps ready? And you got to get traps ready to be ready for trapping season. So this year I'm taking this as a good opportunity to go ahead and try to get things going, get things rolling before it gets too late, and where I actually, come August, September, I've got all my traps ready to go and don't have to worry about it. So I thought I'd walk through and kind of tell you what I show you and talk to you about what I look for as I'm getting my going through my traps and getting my traps ready to. So this is pre-dyeing. So all my traps, I don't have any new traps, but the same process. You don't have to go through quite as many steps, but you got to do the same kind of stuff for new traps too. Mainly, if it's legal, how do I say this? If it's required by law, I guess, which most states a trap tag is required by law. So that's something I'm always checking for. And then you gotta do your staking, attach your stakes if you pre-attach your stakes to your traps. And I like to do that just because I use cable stakes, and that kind of speeds things up. That's one less thing I have to worry about. Was one less thing I have to mess with. When the time gets here, if you're using rebar or something like that, then you just roll with it. So I guess part of that is, depending on your trap inventory, I guess you could say, you might have to either do this and kind of set some traps aside that you got to order parts for, or if you've noticed, through the season that you got a few things broken, you can go ahead and order parts. And mainly what I'm thinking about is like conibear triggers. I always break some conibear triggers in the season, and so I try to keep at least 3 or 4 on hand in the shed of my different sizes that I know I run. That way, if I've got enough conibears that I want trigger breaks, I can just set it to the side, and if I don't need it through the rest of the season, then that's great. I don't worry about it. I know I can replace it in off season, but if I do need that conibear again, then I know I've got the trigger, and I can go ahead and get it replaced and don't have to worry about trying to order one in the middle of the season and not having a trap set when I need it to. So for starters, I'm gonna kick it off with my footholds, and y'all know I'm a big MB550 fan. Part of that's just because of what we're limited to here in Georgia. We're limited kind of some people would classify it as a small trap state, and so number 2 size trap as big as we can go. I know a lot of folks really like the 650 and a little bit bigger size trap. This is what we're stuck with, or not stuck with, because I really like the MB550 as a trap. So when I'm going through, and the first thing I'll do, because they're all nasty and muddy and gunky from trapping season, is I lay them all out on a sheet of plywood and pressure wash them to try to knock the worst of it off of them. And so that's what I've done with these, and now I'm ready to go through and see what needs to be done. And otherwise, once I get through with that, they'll be ready to die. And so this one, right off the bat, I got to put a stake on this. So I've run a variety of stakes in the past. We typically have, we have in kind of the North Georgia portion of the Piedmont of Georgia, I guess you could say, where I'm at, we have hard red clay as our dirt. And so I really like disposable stakes. I like an earth anchor. Not a fan of rebar. I don't know many people that use rebar still. And I've trapped some in South Georgia. A lot of the guys in South Georgia where there's more sandy soil, they'll run the chain bullet stakes or the MB chain stakes. I really like those if you've got the soil where you can pull them out and remove them. Up here it's hit or miss. And I actually was surprised at how many traps I used these wolf fangs this year, and I was actually surprised at how many of those I was able to pull versus having to cut. You can see this one, I cut it. We had a pretty wet winter, so I imagine that had some impact just because the ground was so saturated and made things easier to pull. But So that's something, you know, it's helpful to know ahead of time if you're going into doing this, or if you got new traps ordered, you know, what stakes are you going to use so that you can go ahead and put those, attach those now while you're doing this. For the time being, I'll just set these aside. I've got some wolf fangs that I'll replace them with. Let me grab one of my other tools just to show you a couple of things that I like to keep. So for messing with S hooks and J hooks, I don't really use J hooks, but I don't even really use S hooks. But for J hooks, I really like these, and I don't even know what they're called, but they're like a heavy duty, super heavy duty J hook tool. Now they're not, I mean they're pretty tight, so it takes two hands to operate them. But the way they're designed and have the the point like they do, no matter how tightly crimped your J hook is, it's going to open it. All you got to do is close it down on there and squeeze it together, and it's opening that J hook regardless. These run 20 or 22 bucks, I think. These run about 12, and they're kind of a pain in the neck. They'll work as long as your J hook's not too tightly closed, but they'll also pinch the crap out of your finger right here when you're using them. So I'm not a big fan of these. I've got a few just because I've ordered some and bought some over the years, but this is my preferred choice. So replacing or putting on new stakes, I always got that. And then last year, I've gone a lot of years trapping without really, I guess, testing pan tension. Just kind of, especially with the MB550s, it's kind of supposed to be set at about 2.5 pounds, and so I've just kind of gone with that and not really thought twice about it. Last year I bought a trap pan tester, Sullivan's trap tester, and tested all of my MB550s. And some of them did need adjusting. Most of them were heavier rather than lighter. And there's a couple ways that you can adjust that. If you can bend the dog. One of the reasons I like the MB550s is because it's got that stout rounded dog that's hard to bend though. And then you can also file the dog. Depending on how you file it, I did a video on adjusting MB550 pan tension. If you just Google that, it should come up. But so that's how I went about doing that. So now, get back to where we were. So I know this trap needs a stake. I'm looking. It's got my trap tag, and it's still secure on there. That's something. And I don't know about you, but I always carry a little. I've got some empty lure jars. Some clean lure jars, not old empty ones, but and the trap tags fit perfectly in that thing. So I'll throw me 10 or 12 or just a little small hunk of trap tags in there and close it off, and then I throw that in my lure or trap bag, just so I know, if I'm out on the trap line and I notice it, I make a catch, and as I'm resetting, I notice that trap tag is missing, I can put a new one on there and go on with it. So that's a handy thing to keep in mind. I think last time I ordered trap tags, the first couple orders, when I first got started trapping, I was ordering like 100 or something like that. I think the last time I ordered 1,000, and I've got plenty yet to go. I feel like, or my wife would tell you that I've got a bunch of traps, but hadn't used up those 1,000 tags yet, so I still got some room to grow, right? So I've got, my chain looks good, swivels are all in good working order. My D-ring and base plate. And I did have somebody ask me the other day, they were looking at the MB550s, and they were kind of concerned about the bolts that hold the two, because it's a two-piece base plate that hold it together, about those loosening or backing off or anything. And I don't know. I'm sure that Minnesota, when they're assembling these, they put some kind of Loctite or something on those nuts and bolts, because I've never, knock on wood, I've never had an issue with those coming loose. And I've even, I did replace, I bought a dozen one time, and one of the jaws was cracked. And so I sent Minnesota a message. They sent me a new jaw to replace it, and I just had to take them apart. And I put some blue Loctite back on the bolts just to make sure. But that's one thing, that's the first time I ever got that question. I've never, like I said, knock on wood, I've never heard anybody talk about my MB550 came apart or anything like that. So if you're looking at the Minnesota traps, I wouldn't be too concerned about that. The next thing I'm going to look for is your dog. It's not as common with these MB550s, but on occasion you'll catch a rank coyote and he'll bend that dog. So the dog and everything looks fine. The trap frame looks square. If you've got some in around farm fields or something like that, and you get one that got ran over, you may usually those, you know about them and you can set them aside. You know they're going to need extra work. So in this, really, I'm just kind of going through, making sure I'm kind of separating into two piles: good traps and traps that need work. Then I'll come back and rework, you know, do whatever to my traps that need work. So then I'll just set the trap. So everything sets good, and now I'm going to click the pan in place. All right, my pan's sitting pretty level to just slightly below level. It's not sitting too low that I'm concerned. So now I'm going to take my trap tester. And if you've never used these, they're pretty easy. It's just got 4 marks on here, and each mark represents a pound. So as you push down, and actually what I did, I've got some digital like shipping scales, and so I went and just tested it to kind of calibrate, because as you get farther down, this one in particular, I can't remember if it was a little bit lighter, a little bit heavier. It's pretty darn, you know, it's close enough for what we're going for. That was one thing that I did notice. And one thing I figured out with this is sometimes these ends will come off and your whole thing will come apart. So I try to, when I'm testing the pan tension, and I'm going for somewhere between 2 and 3 pounds is what I like. Because I like to catch anything. I'm not a, you know, only want to catch coyotes. I want to catch whatever comes by. Possum, skunk. Not possums and skunks aren't my favorite, but I'd rather catch a possum or a skunk than nothing. Maybe not a possum, but anyway, so I check my pan tension right in the middle, because you know your pan tension is gonna may adjust a little bit one side or the other. So I just go right in the middle, and so right off the bat you can hit 1 pound pretty quick. There's 2, and that was close to 3, so that's right on the money. So that's where I'm going to be just for kicks. This thing off. I'll do it. I thought I had one of my expander pans. I'm going to go get one of my expander pans too. Alright, so let's see, because you would kind of think that the farther out on the pan would take less tension, right? So let's just check that and see. I'm doing the very outside tip. There's 1. So that is definitely less. That was right at 2. Let me run and get an expander pan, and we'll try it right quick. Alright. Get my trap tester out, and this hose piece comes off a lot. So I've got one of my expander pans. Alright. So let's get it. One thing I noticed too is, you know, your tension can vary a little bit, especially if you've just, you know, dipped the traps or something. That first fire versus, you know, a second or third fire. So if the first fire seems a little heavy and you just, you know, say you've dipped your traps or dyed your traps and you're testing a few of them, you might run it twice and see. And if the first fire is a little bit heavy and the second fire is right on the money, that'll tell you that when you're setting your traps, it'd probably be good if you didn't check the pan tension, to go ahead and fire it once and then set it so that you get your consistent tension. So I'm going to go out here on the outside edge of this. There's 1. Oh, well, let's do it in the middle. 1, 2. That was right on the money, about a little over 2.5, roughly. So you might think that the far edge of this expander pan will have a little bit less tension than the far edge of a regular trap pan. And I hadn't checked it, so honestly, I don't know. Get this thing situated. All right, let's give it a whirl and see. Yeah, that was about 1.5. So that baby's light there. that's really interesting. One thing that I want to do, if I got enough time this evening light, I'm gonna do it, and I'll do it in a separate video. But I've got I got a coyote foot that I froze in like a walking position, and so I want to try it. And it's not gonna be exactly the same, but I want to try it, test fire in these expanded pans and just a regular pan, you know, on different spots, and you know, see how it works. If the foot is standing on the jaw and the trap, because you got to think that trap's moving too as it comes out, right? And so just, you know, a lot of people think that if the trap is on the jaw, when the trap fires, that the jaw would throw the foot out. I don't know if it does or not. So that's one thing that I want to do. So be looking for that soon, because that's especially with this, just doing that, that excites me to see how that shakes out. But anyway, so that's you know, I check my pan tension, and really outside of that, that is those traps are good. Set them aside to get a stake on them, and then they're ready to die. I'll also tell you that you know, I've been reading O'Gorman's Hoofbeats of a Wolfer. I'm almost finished with it, and when I finish it, I'm going to do a review on the book and kind of give you my thoughts and you know, a little bit of, you know, a few excerpts. It's a big book with a lot of information, so there's no way, you know, you could cover very much of it in a podcast, and I don't want to take anything away from you know, what he's doing selling his book and all, but also I want to make sure people know how to get it, because I get that question, and it's not the easiest book to get. So but that's the gist. I mean, going through my predator traps, my coyote traps, that's it. I mean, it's pretty simple. Stake, tag, and then does the trap set and fire, and what's the pan tension like, and that's it. I'm ready to go on to the next one. And so that makes what I was getting at with that, with the O'Gorman thing is, I'll talk about a few things that I'm going to try differently since kind of reading that book. But I'll get to that as soon as I get done with it, which I got to get in gear and get that done. One thing, and I need to keep updating some traps here, I guess, every few years, because one thing that I used to do that I think Bridger, and maybe Minnesota, since they bought Bridger, is fixed, but some of the first number 5 Bridgers that I bought, they didn't have a lock nut on the pan, and so and it happened more you know, on the trap line. But I had several occasions where I caught a beaver in a number 5 Bridger, and I always set them on drowners, but before the beaver drowned, the foot had kicked enough that it unscrewed the nut and I lost my pan. So after that, I ordered some spare pans to have in case that happened, but I also went and put brass bolts and lock nuts on my Bridger number 5. That way I know that they're ready to go. And with these, there's not a whole lot that can go wrong. The dogs, these are some kind of thin dogs. I might ought to get some replacement dogs, because these have a kind of a pause the trip system, and the little nipple on mine has worn down to where you really don't get the click enough. But they still work and still catch beaver, so I don't worry too much about it. Really, I've got my beaver snares, and I'll try to make sure. I use a lot of those. I use with extension cables, and so what I'll do, instead of trying to put a tag on every snare, is I'll have a tag on an extension cable, and then, you know, if I make a catch, I'm going to replace that snare anyway, so the tag stays with the extension cable. So if I'm you know, sometimes I'll take my snares and set them up straight with a long earth anchor, and if that's the case, I'll make sure I got a tag to put on them. But there's not a whole lot to do with snares. I'll wrap them up individually, just to make it a little bit easier to, you know, take one out at the time, instead of, you know, having the whole dozen to unravel. And then otherwise, looking at, well, I guess you got your dog-proof traps. Those are kind of the same thing. I really don't even test fire those, honestly. Just make sure they got a tag, stake, or if I'm going to use an extension cable on them, and then, you know, they're ready to go. Wrap them up. Really, the only other thing is conibears, and so what I'll do is look at them, make sure I got a tag on them. I've got a tag wrapped around the spring, so that's ready to go. My So these are 180s, 160s. These are 160s, and I don't have they just got this short cable, and so I'll just clip an extension cable on these. But my 280s and 330s, I'll have an extension cable, so you can see I've got a cable attached to it. So I'll make sure, I like to have these little clips, the quick links on the ends of it. So I'll make sure I got one of those that's working good and not froze up or something, and make sure I got my tag. And then, you know, since they're going to be set up all summer, I'll go ahead and make sure the springs are depressed. And then what I like to do is just kind of try to make them tidy. I'll just wrap my cable up. The reason I like the quick links is then you can kind of find something to clip it onto, and they don't always stay perfect, but that'll stay on the jaw there and keeps it a little bit tidier than just having a loose cable flopping around there. So with this one, I'm going to depress the springs, undepress the springs, or whatever you want to call that. So I'll take my safety catches off, fire that trap, and then just fold the springs in. Got my trigger in the middle, so it's going to stay safe and in place, and then just tuck that in. And like I said, these will kind of, I usually stack these in milk crates, and so keeping them kind of slim profile works well for that. And then I'll have my ones that the trigger broke off for whatever reason. So I got these springs depressed, but different conibears replace they attach their triggers differently. The Belials, they have a little lock nut on them, which I like. It makes it easy to replace. Some of them will have a rivet, and so you'll have to drill that rivet out and replace the rivet. I like the lock nuts. It makes life easier. Here again, I know this one's going to need the trigger replaced, but I'm going to go ahead and go ahead and get the springs where they're not depressed, and then actually it might have been easier to keep the springs depressed while I replace this trigger, but I'll set that one off to the needs work pile. And then once I go through all my traps, sort out the ones that need work from ones that don't, get stakes on everything, then it's ready for dyeing whatever way you want to dye them. And like I said, I'm gonna talk a little bit more about that once I get once I get done with the hoofbeats of a Wolfer book, and kind of talk through the things that I'm thinking about doing this coming season. And so that's another thing to be thinking about in the off season is I try to keep a list. I found it best to keep a list in my phone of supplies that I need, because if I write them down and I get to, if I'm going to a convention, if you got to get supplies and there's a convention near you, usually that's the best place to get supplies because you can save on shipping. And so if I get to the convention and don't have my list, then I'm just shooting from the hip and wind up buying more than I need. And that's a problem for me, more my wife than anything. But so be thinking about your baits and lures that you're going to use, and your other supplies. If you're going to be needing to order stakes, extension cables, or anything like that, go ahead and get your order in the off season where you get everything else in. And invariably, I always put an order in, and when I get everything in and I'm trying to get everything ready, oh man, I forgot this. So I always wind up having to place a second order. But that's what the time is now. A good time to be thinking about what you're going to do different, what you need to get your traps ready. And so the next step will be dyeing, and then putting them up and waiting on the season. So I think that covers about everything that I was thinking that I wanted to cover. I mean, it's pretty straightforward getting everything ready. Just going through, and it's kind of tedious, especially checking your pan tension and all. But after having done that, having not done it before and then done it, I like it. I think it's overall, I think it is a benefit. And one other thing is, I think I've had some questions about these expanded pans, and I think that's definitely something that I plan to do more of next year. So I bought 12. I put 6 on traps. I'm definitely going to be putting the other 6 on traps, and I'm excited about using those and seeing. So I think I got enough light. I think I'm going to end this video and try to do a close-up of coyote foot firing that trap and see what happens.